Okay, good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us today for Vicom's webinar on Microsoft Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, or MFA. And please note that we will be recording this webinar today. So my name is Andy Jonak, and I'm Director of Marketing for Vicom Computer Services, and I will be hosting the webinar today. So Vicom is a 36-year-old IT solution and services provider that is headquartered in the New York metro area that helps organizations implement, optimize, maintain, and transform their IT environments, and specifically their IT infrastructure environments. And that very much includes solutions that helps keep organizations secure, such as multi-factor authentication. Also, let me introduce our featured speaker for today, Donnie Hout. And Donnie is one of Vicom's enterprise infrastructure architects. And a big part of what Donnie does and is responsible for is helping organizations with Office 365 and helping make sure their environments function efficiently and, just as importantly, securely. And that includes helping organizations evaluate the technology, implement the different types of technology, integrate it within their environment, and make sure that it continues to provide value. So we hope that you find the webinar and information presented today to be intriguing and, most importantly, useful, as what we're discussing today is something we see as very significant to the organizations we work with, security and why to consider using multi-factor authentication. So some logistics for today. The webinar is scheduled for 1 hour total, and as I mentioned above, we will be recording this session. Our presentations will probably take 30 to 35 minutes, and then we have time at the end of the presentations for questions. But if you do have questions throughout the presentations and throughout the webinar, please submit them via the chat window. So all attendees will be muted throughout the presentation, but we will unmute at the end of the presentation to give everybody the ability to be able to ask questions. So with that said, thank you again for joining us today, and let's get going. So IT environments today are increasingly complex. We all know it, we all live and breathe it every day, especially in what we've all chosen to do for a living. We have environments that are on-prem, in the cloud, or a combination there, either hybrid or multi-cloud environments. And we see firms are increasingly looking at and implementing Office 365 to help reduce complexity within their environments. So Office 365 has become the foundation of productivity for so many of the different firms we work with, and it makes sense. Firms don't want to host and maintain these services on-prem anymore. They want to have their people focus on higher value services that can provide and drive value to the business and help move it forward. And Microsoft has done a great job with Office 365. So much so, most of the firms that we work with today are either using Office 365 or evaluating it. But because it's become so popular and so pervasive, what does that mean to firms in regards to security? As security is and always will be a big focus for all of our organizations. Well, Microsoft has a suite of security solutions built for Office 365, and many of them are very good. But at times we see that firms aren't taking advantage of them the way we believe that they should. And one of those areas is around Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, which is what we're going to talk about today. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Donnie Hout. Again, Donnie is Vicom's enterprise infrastructure architect and focuses very heavily on Office 365 and the solutions that surround it, such as Azure MFA. So Donnie, I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Andy, for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us here on this webinar, where we will discuss some of the security-related challenges facing IT organizations and review Microsoft's approach to multi-factor authentication that works to address those challenges. As Andy mentioned, my name is Donnie Hope, and I've been working with Vicom for over 10 years as an infrastructure architect and currently head up our Microsoft Consulting Services practice. Vicom has been working with clients for years to address the growing security concerns that many companies are experiencing, and we feel that our expertise in this area might help some of you to understand your options and technology capabilities that could allow you to improve your overall security posture. Over the next 20 to 30 minutes, we will begin by defining what multi-factor authentication is and why we should use it, and then go over how it can be implemented in your organization. Multi-factor authentication, or MFA, sometimes referred to as two-factor authentication, is a security feature that allows you to authenticate into a system by presenting two types of evidence, or credentials, to prove your identity. Your credentials might fall into any of these three categories: something you know, like a password or a PIN, something you have, like a smart card or phone, and something you are, like your fingerprint. Most of us have been using multi-factor authentication for a very long time. For example, when using a bank card at the ATM and then needing to enter a PIN, or when logged into a website that sends a code to a phone, which is then needed to gain access to an account. Microsoft's implementation of MFA works in a similar manner. A user requests access to an application by providing an initial set of credentials, such as an Active Directory username and password to that application, which in turn passes that request to the domain controller. Microsoft offers a hosted MFA service, and they also allow for an MFA server to be installed on-premise. In both scenarios, once the password is accepted, the MFA system prompts the end user to provide that additional factor to authenticate with. Upon receiving the validation by the MFA system, access to the application is then granted. The reason that using MFA is so important can be underscored by the huge number of hacks that have taken place over the past few years, where bad actors have gained access to personal information. Not only passwords were stolen, but also social security numbers, as well as answers to common secret questions. When we talk about millions of accounts getting stolen, it's often difficult to conceptualize those numbers. This graphic at least offers a way to better visualize the huge numbers that are in scope of these hacks. Shown in this image are some of the most widely used passwords, and as you can see, they are pretty easy to guess. Once your username is known, a password dictionary attack can be performed to try each of these passwords to attempt to gain access to your data. Some additional social engineering can be performed to determine a user's preferences, and if the victim is a sports fan, for example, shown here colored in red, a filter can be used to help reduce the number of passwords that are needed to be successful in that attack. Identity theft is an easy, low-risk, and high-reward type of crime, and a threat to all businesses. It's the fastest-growing type of crime and is now even more profitable than drug-related crimes. Weak or stolen user credentials are a hacker's weapon of choice, used in most web application attacks. As you can see, millions of accounts were compromised at both Adobe and Dropbox. Not only passwords were stolen, but other private information, such as individuals' birth date and physical home address. One of the issues with these security breaches is that in order to protect the brand, companies will often cover up the breach, or at least delay letting the users know of the attack for long enough so the hackers are able to use this information to gain access to sensitive data, as was the case with both LinkedIn and Yahoo. Although headlines tend to focus on hacking activities of famous companies, they are not the only organizations being targeted. Of all targeted attacks, over 25% are aimed at businesses with fewer than 250 employees. Antivirus systems and advanced firewalls are necessary security elements, as are vulnerability tests. But without securing user authentication, though, the front door is wide open to intruders. And password theft is constantly evolving as hackers employ various methods, including keylogging and phishing hacks. Once in, cybercriminals do more than merely steal data. Often they destroy data, change programs or services, or use servers to transmit propaganda, spam, or malicious code. Employees are already accustomed to using multi-factor authentication, though, to access online services such as banking, gaming, and social media. So they should find these additional required steps to access sensitive corporate data acceptable as well. Microsoft provides 3 methods for enabling MFA for end users. The first is available to all Office 365 customers at no additional cost. The second is a premium feature requiring the Azure AD Premium P1 license. And the third is an advanced premium feature requiring the Azure AD Premium P2 license. These screenshots show the end user experience when logging into Office 365 without using MFA. After entering the email address and password, the user gets right in. Now we will talk about the steps needed to enable MFA in your organization. If we wanted to use the first method to enable MFA, which is included at no additional cost for Office 365 customers, open the MFA admin website by navigating to the active user section of the Office 365 admin console. Click on More, and then select the multi-factor authentication setup link. From there, you'll have the option to select specific users, and then click the Enable link on the right-hand side of the page to turn MFA on for that user. Multiple users can be selected as well to turn on MFA for more than one user at the same time. This can also be done in bulk by clicking the bulk update link and uploading a CSV file with the users that you want to turn MFA on for. And this can also be enabled via a basic PowerShell script. Once that is done, those users will have MFA enabled on their account. There are some other concepts that are important to know and understand with regard to MFA. Older client applications, such as Office 2010, and native mail apps on older iOS and Android devices will not know how to utilize modern authentication models that are the backbone of Microsoft MFA technology. To get around this, Microsoft has introduced something called an app password. It is generally not recommended to use app passwords since their very existence is due to the need to use older and more vulnerable software. But if there's a business justification and the IT admins fully understand and recognize the possible risks, it can be allowed. When using app passwords, it's important to remember that app passwords are auto-generated and only entered once per application. Also, app passwords are to be used per device, not per application. So for example, you would create a single password for all the apps on your home computer, and then another single password for all of the apps on your office computer. MFA can also be configured to trust specific IP addresses and not bother users with requiring MFA when accessing apps from a specific location, such as within the four walls of your office. There are a few MFA methods that Microsoft supports, including the user receiving notifications via phone calls, text messages, or using the Microsoft Authenticator app. And finally, the administrator can allow trusted devices to not prompt for MFA after a specified number of days. All of these settings can be configured in the MFA service settings page. After a user has MFA enabled, they will be required to configure it by providing some additional information. This is essentially a four-step process. First, the user is offered a few contact methods, including phone, text, or the mobile Microsoft Authenticator app. We suggest embracing the use of the Authenticator app since it provides the user the ability to simply click on the word approve instead of having to read 6 numbers and then enter them manually into the MFA website. If the mobile app is selected, a QR code is displayed on the screen. At this point, the user is instructed to download the app on their mobile device. Once the Microsoft Authenticator app has been downloaded, the user can click the plus sign to add an account, then select work or school account, and then scan the QR code via the device's built-in camera. Once this is done, the second step is to confirm that the app is working. The MFA service will send a request to the app, and the user will have the option of selecting the word approve. If for any reason the Authenticator app is not working, a secondary method of verifying identity is needed, and a phone number is required. Finally, the user has an opportunity to record the app password that has been created. Once MFA is enabled for a user, it would look like this. After entering their username and password, they would be prompted for MFA via the mobile app. If the admin configured the option to remember their device, the user would have the option to select the checkbox, telling Microsoft to not ask for MFA again for the specified time period. Once approved, the user is allowed into their environment. This chart describes 3 possible states of user MFA: disabled, enabled, and enforced. Disabled means that the user is not using MFA and non-browser apps remain unaffected. When in the enabled state, the user is enrolled in MFA, but the changes have not yet taken effect. When users sign in the next time, they will be prompted to set up an additional verification method. Here too, non-browser apps remain unaffected until the setup is complete. The enforced state means that every login requires a secondary authentication. Non-browser apps will not work until app passwords are created and configured at the time of login. An important caveat to understand is that the default MFA configuration can be considered insecure when not taking advantage of an advanced Azure AD Premium component called conditional access. This is because non-browser-based apps, such as Outlook 2010, can have MFA enabled for it, but it would have no effect, and the user would be able to continue to use those applications without consequence until they have configured their MFA settings. Another important note is that modern authentication is already enabled for Office 2016 clients. But if your environment has Office 2013, there are two registry keys that can be deployed through group policy to enable modern authentication. To set up or confirm MFA settings, users can be directed to aka.ms/MFA setup. Although this basic MFA functionality is great to have and seems quite simple, there are some challenges with using this approach. First of all, there's no way to automatically add people to this list of enabled users. Once a user is onboarded to Office 365, the administrator would need to remember to go to the MFA admin site to enable MFA for those new accounts. Second, there's no intelligence built in to know whether MFA should be enabled for that user. For example, you may want to require MFA for all personal devices, but not on company-owned laptops that are a member of an Active Directory domain. In addition, you may want to automatically enable MFA for users that match specific risk criteria, such as sign-in attempts from multiple geographic regions simultaneously. Conditional access, which is one of the components that are included in the Azure AD Premium license, offers an intelligent assessment of granting or blocking access. It can allow the enforcement of multi-factor authentication based on factors such as group membership, application sensitivity, device state, location, and sign-in risk. As long as the Azure AD P1 license is applied, conditional access policies can be created to provide the IT admin with the control needed to require MFA under specific circumstances. Ultimately, all users should have MFA enabled, but during the MFA deployment, it's often easier to require it only for members of a specific group. In addition, specific conditions can be configured, such as enabling the MFA policy for web browsers, but not ActiveSync clients. And finally, the control that is enforced could be to block specific users or grant access only when using MFA from a domain-joined device. Since authenticating with a password is often the prerequisite to using multi-factor authentication, a truly secure environment would allow users to reset their own passwords without requiring the intervention of IT. In an Active Directory integrated environment, if a user needed to reset a forgotten password, they would need the IT help desk to reset it for them, which is time-consuming for all parties involved and potentially vulnerable to social engineering attacks. As a result, Microsoft has provided a method of allowing users to reset their own Office 365 passwords. As shown in this screenshot, password reset capabilities can be configured for selected groups of users, or all users, and IT can configure what methods are used to validate the user prior to allowing the password to be reset. Although this capability is made available at no additional cost by Microsoft for all Office 365 customers, most environments that use Active Directory internally will want users to be able to reset their passwords and have that new password synchronized down to the on-premise Active Directory environment. This concept, termed password write-back, is only available in the Azure AD P1 and P2 license. Once a user configures self-service password reset, or SSPR, they will be able to easily reset their own passwords without IT involvement. To configure SSPR, users can be directed to aka.ms/SSPR setup. Besides MFA and SSPR, there are other features that, from a security perspective, would be considered required or at least highly recommended. Sign-in logging is one of them. Without Azure AD Premium, there is no way for IT to have visibility into the sign-in activity of their end users. If someone fears that their account is compromised, it's mostly guesswork that would have to be used to help determine that. As you can see in the image shown here, which came from a production environment, someone is clearly trying to hack into this organization's Office 365 tenant. We were able to have access to see this information only after purchasing an Azure AD Premium license in their account. As we mentioned previously, conditional access is a feature that is only available with Azure AD Premium license. The features that we've discussed, such as conditional access and password write-back, require Azure AD Premium P1. With Azure AD Premium P2, additional security functionality is made available, but only when the license is assigned. Those features include more automation around security-related incidents. If Microsoft flags a user for risk, action can automatically be taken, such as requiring MFA for that account, resetting their password, and completely blocking access. Users can be flagged for risk for lots of different reasons, such as if their account was used to sign in from an anonymous IP address, or signed in from impossible travel situations, such as signing in from Arizona and then Alabama 2 minutes later. Beyond Azure AD Premium, there is additional functionality that is available when purchasing the entire Enterprise Mobility and Security bundle. The EMS bundle includes Azure AD Premium, plus additional capabilities such as advanced threat analytics and cloud app security, which can provide even more visibility, reporting, and alerting options for your Office 365 admins. Since we mentioned Azure AD Premium a few times so far, we thought it would be helpful to cross-reference some of the features that are included in the different license editions. We highlighted the features that were discussed today. To recap, MFA and SSPR come with all Office 365 subscriptions. Password write-back, advanced sign-in reporting, and conditional access come only with the P1 license. And the P2 license is required for identity protection capabilities. From a costing perspective, without an Office 365 license, Azure AD Basic costs $1 per user per month, P1 costs $6, and P2 costs $9 per user per month. And if going with the EMS bundle, the E3 plan costs almost $9, and the E5 plan costs almost $15 per user per month. Here are some additional recommendations before we conclude and open the floor for questions. As we discussed, MFA really should be enabled for all Office 365 users, but at a minimum should be required for all global admins. Since modern authentication is not enabled automatically in Office 365 tenants, the PowerShell commands shown here can be used to enable it for both Exchange Online as well as Skype for Business Online. Conditional access and self-service password reset can be configured directly using the URLs shown here. Also, it is critical to view the security reports and sign-in logs on a weekly basis to ensure that your environment is always secure. Thank you so much for your time and attention. We would now be happy to stop and answer any questions you have related to MFA.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it. Again, this is Andy Jonak back again. So everyone, we wanted to take a moment here and open it up for questions if anybody had any questions that they would like to address to us before we continue. So at this moment, we'll give people a chance to ask any questions. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we go ahead and mute everybody again? Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody again and continue the rest of the presentations. Okay. Okay, everyone. But what I wanted to do, and I will open it up for questions again afterwards, as we get towards the end, is just take a quick minute before we wrap up here and just let you know who we are as an organization. So the organization that Donnie and I are part of is Vicom Computer Services. And as I mentioned earlier, Vicom is a 36-year-old IT solution and services provider. And we provide solutions for our customers around all aspects of your IT infrastructure, including cloud, whether it's on-prem or multi-cloud. It also includes solutions around IT and data security, data protection and high availability solutions, including disaster recovery and business continuity, BCDR, for specifically around IT. We have solutions around enterprise management solutions, which includes operations management and service management, and the ability to be able to integrate those as well into each, as well as consulting services and IT governance as well. So some of the different areas in which we focus upon. And we also offer a suite of professional services to help organizations wherever they might sit within the maturity level of their environments, their solutions, or their overall services needs. So that's just a quick note about some of the things we do. This slide represents a little bit more about some of the areas in which we focus around all areas around IT infrastructure and everything that surrounds it, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud, as I mentioned before, as well as a suite of support and managed services that we have as well, again, to help organizations wherever they might need help, whether they need minimal help and support or they're looking to completely outsource it to an organization like Vicom. We have the ability to be able to do that. So, that being said, that is what we wanted to accomplish this afternoon. So that's a little bit about the organization and Donnie's presentation on multi-factor authentication. So again, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to see if anybody has any questions that they would like to address around either Vicom or anything that Donnie talked about today around multi-factor authentication. Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. Okay. Does anybody, again, one more chance to give people the ability to ask any questions if they might have. Okay. Okay. I'm good. Okay. Well, so everyone, if you do have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us outside of the webinar here. And again, we want to thank you for going ahead and attending our webinar this afternoon. We appreciate it. We hope that you found the information useful and relevant to your organization and in terms of what you're doing today. You'll receive an email from me or your account manager if you're currently working with Vicom over the next couple of days. But in the meantime, if you're interested in hearing anything more about Microsoft Azure, multi-factor authentication, MFA, or anything else that Vicom does, please feel free to reach out to me or to your Vicom account manager. I'll leave this slide up for a little bit with some, which has my contact information. And again, we want to thank you again for joining us. And please feel free to share your feedback on the webinar as well. So thank you very much again for considering Vicom, and everyone have a great day.